In the wise words of Chris Hemsworth.
Settyyy!
Welcome back to another NCUT movie review. Today we have Furiosa, a staple in Australian film. Thank God Mad Max is back.
The movie is a prequel and it centers around Furiosa, Charlize Theron's character from Mad Max Fury Road. And in this movie, Anya-Taylor Joy plays a younger version of her, and we find out that she's been kidnapped from the Promised Land, or the land of infinite abundance, that we see her take the characters to at the end of Mad Max Fury Road. And we find out essentially in this movie how Furiosa becomes who she is, how she loses her arm, what her motivations are to be the person she is in Mad Max Fury Road, why she wants to save these people and take them to the Promised Land. And we see Furiosa from an early age, right when she gets kidnapped. She looks about 10 to 15 years old, and then we see her progress from a young 10, 15-year-old to a girl who's hide her identity. And we see that she cuts her hair so she can blend in with the war boys, so that she can essentially get away from Immortan Joe wanting to turn her into a breeder. And we see the introduction of Praetorian Jack, who is essentially a Mad Max lookalike. I think for half the movie, I thought it was Mad Max in a way, or an iteration of him. And he pretty much teaches Furiosa the ropes, shows her how to drive the truck, shows her how to defend the truck from the invaders or anyone who's trying to take the truck away from her. And they end up having an interesting dynamic that sort of brings you along for the ride and adds a romantic aspect to the movie.
Straight off the bat here, you have to mention Chris Hemsworth's acting in here. Him playing Dementus, my God, he was so good. I think he's actually getting better as he's getting older at acting now. He has his Thor roles. He has all the other action-packed roles. But in this one, he kind of plays this twisted, sadistic character. But on the other hand, he also has like this nice aspect to his character. But he also is manipulative when he's trying to be nice as well. And that's prefaced a lot throughout this film, is that he's just trying to survive in this wasteland, like everyone is. But he's just got the kind of upper hand on people because he's just been put in power. And this is how I think the wasteland goes now in post-apocalyptic Australia.
And George Miller did a really good job of writing his character in this movie. He wasn't just a brute with like big muscles and a big guy to be on the screen like we sort of know Chris Hemsworth to be in some of his later works that he's done. I mean, I don't blame them. The guy's an absolute hunk. Why wouldn't you have him like that? But you see in aspects of this film that he's actually a normal guy, and the reason why he is the way he is, rather than just being a crazy psycho killer like we're used to the main antagonists being in these Mad Max films. There's a little bit more layers to him. So that was sort of a different approach from George Miller, and it was actually a really welcomed addition as well, and allowed Hemsworth to really actually act in this movie.
And also Anya, she plays Furiosa perfectly. From a kid then to progressing to what she was now, you can see that she was stoic, she's been through a lot, and her mission was the only point of this film, is just not kind of building her character up, but building her mission forward. So you can see Anya's kind of linking that degree between Charlize Theron, that character of Furiosa being built.
And Anya is like one of the best actors in Hollywood right now. You can't go wrong with her. If you put her in a role, it's going to go well.
She immerses herself.
She's probably the woman when it comes to acting these days. Like any role that she does, we've seen her in so many different things. Like one film that I think off the top of my head, Northman. She's so different in that movie. She sort of has aspects of Northman in this movie as well, when the character she is in that. And you just know that seeing her in this movie, she was going to go all in, and that's what she does in her movies. And in this one, it's no different. One of the main aspects of Mad Max is the war rig. What uses the truck they use to get the gasoline from Gasoline Town to wherever the hell they're trying to go in the Mad Max. In all the series of Mad Max, this is a common thing. And in this movie, the driver of the war rig was Tom Burke, who played Praetorian Jack. And quite honestly, I thought for half of the film he was Mad Max. Until they named him Praetorian Jack, I thought this was Mad Max. Same fit, same look and everything. But his love aspect with Furiosa was really well, and actually did a good job of building up their chemistry between one another, because you just didn't see it coming at all. I didn't even think that she would have a love interest like that. And it sort of makes sense why she falls in love with Tom Hardy, who's Mad Max in the second film.
It also adds to the story too, because she could have left multiple times throughout this film, yet she has to stay there for a reason, so you had to give her a reason, right? So it worked really well. That dynamic, perfect to see on screen. Almost like a Ryan Gosling and an Emily Blunt connection.
Not even close.
Oh, come on.
You can't make that.
Oh, I'm going to give it.
You can't make that.
I'm giving it.
One knock that you sometimes have on watching a prequel is that the main character's safe. You know that they're going to obviously be in the sequel because the prequel's about them. So this movie, while we go into it, might thinking that it might struggle with that. It still has a way of building up the plot that you're interested, and not just like, this is just cannon fodder because they're just trying to milk Furiosa character. You actually want to learn about Furiosa and why she is the way she is, and also learn how she lost her arm, for instance, or what drives her. And I think this movie does a really good job of showing that, while also not just being sort of boring. In other movies where that's common in lately, it's kind of boring because you're just like, okay, this is just setting it up. It's trying to tell a book story essentially in a movie form. But this movie did it in a way that kept you interested the whole way. Now, whether that was because every 10 minutes in this movie it gets so loud that you think you're going to go deaf. What? And the action keeps you interested? Maybe. But it's a hats off to the writer, George Miller, and the director, George Miller, because he did a way of making this movie that you weren't bored ever.
If you've watched our reviews before, we always talk about immersion. And there's a couple of aspects to immersion that I think you need to experience. And one of those is being in VMAX. If you're Australian, you understand what that means. In America, I have no idea what you guys have. But the biggest and loudest sounds possible in a theater is what you need to experience. Because half of this film, you can't hear. You are deaf beyond belief. And then the other half, it's so silent you can hear a pin drop. That's an aspect to it, the immersion factor.
The only thing that sort of takes you out of the immersion of this movie is the fact that the road that the movie is based on has no potholes. Now, if you're from Australia, that's not possible. The road would be filled with potholes. You would have a flat tire probably 20 k's into the drive. Praetorian Jack would be spending half the movie jacking up the truck, fixing the tire, putting the freshie on the spare, driving to the mechanics. I mean, if you watch Mad Max 1, Mel Gibson's character literally has to go and get his tire repaired because it popped a flat. Guess what? You're on Australian roads. That's what happens. The government doesn't fix your roads. So that's the only thing that sort of ruined the immersion for me in this whole movie was the fact that the road was flat. I don't know where they found that in Australia, but I want to go there and see it because it doesn't exist.
Also, just adding to that, RACV, if you're calling them, it takes about 45 minutes for them to go. I wanted to sit there for 45 minutes waiting for them to get their tyre changed. Otherwise, where's your immersion?
One thing that we love about Mad Max films, you would have seen in Fury Road, was the giant rig that has the guitarist playing on there. The soundtracks of these movies is really good. Aspects of this movie soundtrack that worked really well. They had a didgeridoo playing in the background, but they sort of made it like a rock version of the didgeridoo, and it sounded awesome. And the way it was able to build up the anticipation with the didgeridoo playing in the background was sort of like an amplified rock aspect of it was really, really cool. And it's also cool to see and hear different aspects of Australian stuff on the screen. Like, obviously Hemsworth was in it, and he's such a well-known Australian actor, but there were so many other different smaller actors from Australia that maybe aren't as well known on the worldwide stage, but growing up in Australia, we would have seen them in different TV shows or different comedy acts or even just different sort of mediums that we know in Australia. As well as Chris Hemsworth's wife, Elsa Patansky. And also in one scene or two scenes, Chris Hemsworth's dad is actually in the background too. He's one of the truck drivers or one of the car drivers in the movie. So it's sort of a family affair. And that's, I guess, another reason why these Mad Max films are so great is because George Miller being Australian himself and just sort of by building up the pop culture of Australia, which is always great to see.
Well, just one thing I found a little irritating was the way her arm was taken off her body. I thought they could do something better with that, but I mean, I don't have any ideas to add to that as to why it could be better. I just felt like there could be something interesting, like she might have to cut it off for a reason, but she kind of just ran away from the arm and left it hanging. I don't know, it just wasn't enough. I felt like there should have been more towards that, but...
Nitpicking, that was one of the dumber things in the movie because you don't just lose an arm and just not feel it or anything like that. There could have been much cooler ways where she had to sort of lose the arm. She had to chop it off to save the promised land, the green land that she comes from, because she drew a map on her arm how to get there. That could have been a cooler aspect and a more plausible than the way she loses her arm. But nitpicking here, nitpicking.
Literally.
That was only one little thing where I was watching it going, okay, that probably wouldn't happen. And it can't happen because she's in the desert. She would have died immediately. Another thing that just takes you out of the immersion completely is Chris Hemsworth driving a monster truck at the speed of 900 million miles per hour and
speed of light.
Can just catch up to anyone driving anything. I mean, I know the thing's got 15 wheels on it, but somehow, if you get 3 days ahead of him, he still catches you in like the next scene. So yeah, I don't know how on driving on sand dunes, his monster truck is able to cover so much ground, but I mean, I need that car to get to work because I would never be late.
As you guys know, we always wrap these reviews up with a rating, and I saw IGN rated this a 10 out of 10. It almost is. Or at least I am, going to give it a 90%. We love to see Australian films being put on the big screen. It deserves a bigger box office, from what I've been told.
Cinema is dead, people. Cinema is dead.
But this movie is something to see. It has different aspects compared to the other Mad Maxes. If you're going there purely for the acting, you can't go wrong with Anya, and you cannot go wrong with Chris. We love them both, and having both of them on the screen makes me even just want to go see it. That's the reason to why I went and saw it, was because of these two, and they did not disappoint one bit. So yeah, go watch it.
My rating for this film would be around about 90%. I can't really knock anything of this. I'm a huge Mad Max fan. I've loved them since the first one. Mel Gibson came out, even though I wasn't born back then. But just watching them now, they've got so much rewatchability. This new iteration with Fury Road, like the Furiosa saga, I think is great. And Anya-Taylor Joy, it would have been hard to fill Charlize Theron's boots, but I think she did it because obviously she's just an amazing actress. And Anya, you can't go wrong with having her in it. Chris, it was good to see him doing something a little bit different and a little bit outside of his comfort zone, I think, in the way that he was acting. And also a villain. You don't see that much Chris Hemsworth. I mean, he's always the good guy, typecast as the good guy. So you don't really see that often. It was nice to see him do something different there. And yeah, I mean, these Mad Maxes, as long as they keep staying fresh and sort of adding something new each time, I think they can keep doing them as long as they want, really.
Anyway, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Question of the day. What's your favourite Mad Max? For me, it would have to be number 1. I just think the original is so good and there's something so interesting about it. And Tokar, the main villain, is just so weird. And I just love the old aspect of the movie.
I did it for you, Bubba.
I'm doing it. You're doing it for me, Bubba.
Bubba. Mine just has to be this one because I love this movie. I'm just fresh off it and that's why I love it.
Yep.
Anyway, guys, peace. We out.
Peace.
And cut.